like to call to order the Conservation Advisory Council for the town of Niskayuna. This is the March 5th, 2025 meeting, and work, please call the roll.
Yes, so we have Ellen Daviero, Joy Wang, Ashok Ramasubramanian, Simran Uturkar, and Chuck Petrowski is online, and then Chairman Dartshire is here.
Great. Next, we have no minutes, so I'd like to move on to the privilege of the floor. So if you'd like to address the council, please step forward.
Hello. My name is Denise Cashmere. I live at 949 Pierce Road and have for 36 years.
Denise, can you pull the
Justin?
microphone? Yeah.
Oh, people can hear me.
No,
even though
'cause
they're
he
lower.
won't be
Oh,
able
okay.
to.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No one's ever told me they couldn't hear me. But anyway, just as a background, I worked as a senior planner for Schenectady County for over 30 years and served as the staff to the Schenectady County Environmental Advisory Council for 25 of those years. I wanted to make a few comments about the 929 Pierce Road subdivision. Some of these comments have already been made to the planning board and have been passed along. The new map of I think it's the third drawing of the subdivision displays contour lines for neighboring lots as was requested by the planning board. And I contend that those contour lines for the property at 943, which is 2 down, labeled as Griner are incorrect. And as I said, I've made that point to the planning board. The elevation and slope of that property was changed when the construction occurred there in 2021, which resulted in numerous water problems and drainage issues to my property, which is right next door, south, and at 2488 Brookshire Drive, which is the property behind me and adjacent to this new proposed subdivision. If you refer to the approved site plan maps for the property, you'll see that both the front and the back contour lines were changed by bringing in a substantial amount of fill and increasing the slope away from the house, most notably in the back, over 3.5 feet, as a matter of fact, next to the house. And that's crucial to note because even though the developer originally had stated that drainage predominantly flows north, it in fact flows along our property lines in the back, as confirmed by Laura at your last meeting. My property is 2 lots down, and my garage sits a full 31 feet off of that back property line. And I continue to have groundwater seeping up through my garage floor as a result of the increased elevation and slope change. The proposed subdivision will only contribute to our drainage problems. It's also integral to note that the front contour lines at the 943 property were also changed, which further exacerbated drainage issues to my property. Placing more impervious surfaces on yet another property, including 2 driveways, will only make things worse. I actually chuckled when I saw the note on the proposed subdivision map that the one driveway would be pitched to the south, which would be away from the downhill. Again, I watched as the house, now located adjacent to me, installed an additional piece of driveway that was not on the approved site plan, but completed during construction, which in fact is pitched to the north towards my property and drains all the way onto my property. My driveway now contains the runoff silt from the poor sandy soil that was brought in for the construction to increase the elevation. Another issue is clearing. I also bring to your attention the limits of clearing of the proposed lots. I did hear stated that clearing out old trees, etc., is discouraged, but can you guarantee that? Again, I go back to the construction at 943 Pierce Road, adjacent to my property. Every single tree was taken down. Needless to say, that was not in any way helpful to securing runoff. Next, I quickly wanted to just discuss the topic of the berm that was noted as if necessary. Again, I'm going back to my experience with the recent construction I've already mentioned. Yes, a berm swale was put into place after I forced the issue since it was on the approved site plan map. The same with check dams. Both were supposed to be permanent, monitored, maintained, and replaced as needed. None of that has ever happened, and all were useless very quickly. I will also note that I had a hydrogeologist visit the site, and he immediately told me that dirt pushed up to create a swale is fairly useless without additional piping to carry water. An acceptable plan was submitted to the town by a competent engineer for this 943 construction. Unfortunately, the builder who became the resident simply ignored crucial parts of the design, especially as it pertained to sediment and stormwater control. In fact, when the original engineer saw what was built, he was appalled, as that was not his design with safeguards. Again, where are our guarantees? All of these noted issues should be taken into consideration. As Laura has mentioned at your last meeting, code states that you cannot make any drainage situation worse with new construction. To date, as a result of the construction next door to my property, I have spent over $20,000 with basement remediation and planting a trees. Yet I still have issues and parts of my yard are unusable. Lastly, perhaps on a more personal note, as a resident of Pierce Road and the person that completed the town's historic resources inventory when I worked as a Schenectady County planner, I'm concerned about the character of the neighborhood. I appreciate your comments that were made at your last meeting regarding the character of the Pierce Road and how it has changed. I've lived on Pierce Road for 36 years. My house was constructed in 1904 on land that was sold by the Pierce family. The Pierce homestead, which was built in 1822, sits directly adjacent to the south of this proposed subdivision. In fact, that the house that the developer is proposing to tear down is a 1910 Sears Roebuck catalog house. I also appreciate Laura Robertson's comments made at the last planning board meeting, citing the trend for developers to purchase a house on a larger property, let the house deteriorate, then declare it a tear down so that they can put more than one house on a property. Note, the home at 929 Pierce Road was continuously occupied until this last purchase. Then it sat there with the windows open to rot. There still remains a few lots on Pierce Road where this can happen again. I certainly hope not. Thank you.
Does the council have any questions?
You want to ask me questions?
I had a question.
Sure.
Thank you, ma'am, for coming and providing us your thoughts and comments. So when you said there is additional stuff that is coming into your driveway, is it clear that, and then you mentioned something about like wet basements and things like that, like, you know, all of Niskayuna has wet basements, right? Like, so is it clear to you that you are seeing a different response after the 2021 construction that you mentioned?
100%. When the construction was in process and they brought in, and boy, do I have photos of tons and tons and tons of this sandy soil. My basement literally started filling with water. And I was going to say, that's why I contacted, and thank God I had a little bit of a knowledge of somebody through planning. I had a hydrogeologist come over, and he basically said, yes, this hydrology has been changed. And he's the one that pointed out that, you know, sandy soil isn't going to hold without, you know, a piping through it or some other mitigation. So, yeah, I mean, the fact that I lived there for 34 years before this happened kind of seemed obvious to me. I mean, I have a sump pump. I have 2 sump pumps. I always have, and I've never had issues.
Okay. Is there any way we can get a copy of your remarks? Like Laura, is she allowed to email
Sure.
it to you? Yeah. Oh.
I can also give you everything. I also have the contour lines for the front and the back that now exist for this house. Is there anything else or no? Nothing
Not
else?
from me.
I do love Pierce Road. I really do. Mark, I guess, do you?
Okay, sure.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Chuck, do you have any questions at all? You're on mute.
Anyone read lips?
I think they're still on you.
You're still on mute, Chuck. He's
Chuck,
not?
He's not.
Okay, we have
This happens to clerks
technical.
sometimes. Can you sign off and sign back on again? It might fix your volume. Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
thank you. Okay. Laura, when did you want to do the training?
We have one more person.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you guys were together. Oh, okay.
We
I
are together,
no,
but
I didn't.
am I good to
You're
go?
good. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, good evening. My name is Nadia Rockwell. I live at 2488 Brookshire Drive. I'm here to speak about the proposed subdivision of 929 Pierce Road, which is in our backyard. Our home sits downhill from 929 Pierce Road. I don't believe additional homes on Pierce Road is a great idea. The purpose of me attending this meeting is because we have had detrimental effects from a new build at 943 Pierce Road that began about 4 or 5 years ago. The development of 943 Pierce Road had negative impacts on our home in terms of drainage. We ultimately had to install 350 feet of drainage around our home after years of attempting to work with the town and the builder/homeowner of 943 Pierce Road to mitigate the water entering our property. We dealt with fast-moving rivers on our property and large areas of standing water for several years that all started once the development of 943 had begun. We lived in our home for 3 years prior to the construction of 943 Pierce Road, and we never had water issues at these detrimental levels. I also want to mention that the sump discharge for 943 Pierce Road is still very close to our property line, which did and does not help with water issues. It was admitted to us that the builder/property owner of 943 Pierce Road could not get ahead of the water coming off of his property, and we continue to have water and silt dumped on us all year round. The plans for 943 Pierce Road allowed for the home to be built up on a hill and backfilled with just sand. This was detrimental to homes around 943 Pierce Road. For a couple of years, my family was not able to use our property due to it under constant water. Sometimes even Brookshire Drive would be underwater. This was a very difficult time for us and not something we want to go through again. The installation of the drainage on our property has helped my family to once again continue to utilize our property. However, it was due to other people's poor decisions that ultimately made us pay the price. 943 Pierce Road had a water management plan. However, it was never enforced. This is our worry with 929 Pierce Road. They will have a water management plan that will also never be enforced. Backfilling with only sand is detrimental to neighboring properties. My family lives on a 1-acre property with trees along the perimeter of our property. This was a big draw for us to move into this property. The trees give us a lot of privacy. Many homes on Pierce Road also have trees lining the perimeter of their properties, and that's a huge draw for people. With the subdivision of 929 Pierce Road, there will be trees that will have to be removed, along with a very large barn that is on our property line. The proposed plan shows trees to be planted where the barn is. However, those trees will not give us the same privacy as the barn does. If this barn is removed, I'm also very positive that a lot of rodents will be finding new places to live, and we'll have to deal with that also. Every tree was taken down on 943 Pierce Road. There's nothing in place to stop the developer of 929 Pierce Road from taking down every tree on that property also. From what I've heard at planning board meetings, this developer has the reputation of taking down trees that he's not supposed to on other properties he's developed on Pierce Road. Prior to the property at 929 Pierce Road being sold in 2024, it was inhabited by a family. The property was sold almost a year ago and has been left vacant since. We've witnessed the windows and doors of the property left open for long periods of time, and the grass wasn't mowed for months. I don't see how it's okay that property owners can be allowed to intentionally neglect a home with the ultimate goal of tearing it down because it's too dilapidated to keep. Subdividing this property is going to mean that a perfectly good home will be torn down and 2 homes in close proximity will be built. Our property cannot take on additional water. We're currently dealing with sump discharges from 943 Pierce Road and 939 Pierce Road that are close to or on top of our property line. I honestly believe that the charm and character of our neighborhood has already started to be affected by the development on Pierce Road in the recent years. I hope this board and the town will think long and hard about how their decisions are affecting not only the character of our neighborhood, but also please take into account what residents have had to endure when there is zero oversight of these developments. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody on the board have any questions?
Yes, quick clarification, please. This is Ashok Ramasubramanian, CAC member. And thank you again for coming and presenting your remarks. And you mentioned a couple of years you were not able to use your property, as in you are not able to live in your own home.
No, we could live in the home, but I have 2 kids, 2 dogs, and the kids just couldn't play in the yard. I mean, it was either the driveway, they could be on the hard surfaces like the driveway or garage or in the house, but the actual land was too wet.
Okay. And this is, when you say 2 years, it's like a full 2 calendar years.
Until we spent tens of thousands of dollars to put in the drainage.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. So Laura, would you like to?
Chairman, just
yeah.
a minute, please.
Go ahead.
Ma'am, would we be able to have a copy of your remarks as well, please?
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay,
I think we should do the slides at the end of the meeting.
that's fine.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know what your preference was. Okay, so let's move on to the EAFs. And the first one is 2025-02. It's the 2-lot subdivision at 921 Pierce Road, which both of the speakers talked about. We have looked at this project multiple times. As you will recall, when the proposal first came to us, the applicant was proposing a flag lot or a spaghetti lot where one house would be stacked behind the other one. And that particular configuration is discouraged by the comprehensive plan for a number of reasons. We looked at that. This is a new plan where the applicant is going to take down an existing home and put 2 houses on the lot. The houses will be non-conforming. The area requires 100-foot frontage. However, the subdividing the lot equally will give each house only 95 feet frontage, so they're 5 feet short. At our last meeting, what we did is we asked the planning department to look at what the implications of a reduction in essentially the required frontage would do to the area. And Laura, do you want to present what your findings, or Clark, if you did it, whoever did it?
No, Laura actually did that. So
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's just very rough. All I did was compare the frontage of this property to frontages along Pierce Road. The ones that are very similar or larger are in red, and the ones that are, I'd say, still similar but a little bit smaller are in orange. And I think, you can see when you get down into the area of, I think that's Huntington. Sorry, my computer crashed, so I screenshotted it because I didn't have time to make the new map. But, these houses are close together and wouldn't necessarily be impacted. But there's quite a number of areas up here. There's a chunk of red a little bit farther down, and then farther down on Pierce, there's also a chunk of homes that are basically situated in the middle of their lot with approximately this amount of frontage. And yeah, so like I had mentioned, I do get concerned if there's a parcel that was created clearly for just one house, when the house is sitting right in the middle of it, not a double lot. And I'd say that there's 10% of those, and then there's probably another 10% of the orange ones. So at least 20% of the whole parcels
Along Pierce Road.
along Pierce Road.
So I think last time, thanks, Laura. I appreciate that. I think last time we had a number of concerns. So what I'd like to do is open the discussion up. to the members of the board. Just to review what we were concerned about, we were certainly concerned about the water. We did bring up whether the existing house had some historic value. We were concerned about the potential precedents that allowing these two houses to go on the lot and what the impact would be to the character of the neighborhood. So, if I've forgotten an issue, please.
Well, Dar, I just thought that while you have that image up there, you might, or Laura, you might be able to speak to the point Ms. Kashmir brought up about the elevation of 943,
Yeah, that would be helpful.
just for people, just so they have that in there.
Yeah, so
I don't think we've received an update from the applicant's engineer on that yet.
yeah, so the topo line of 340 is here. By the time you get to, you can see on this aerial, this is the house that they're discussing as being built and then negatively impacting them. That's at 332. Miss Rockwell's house is over here. That's at 330. Miss Kashmir's house is up on the corner here. Oops. And it's even lower. So we're saying that the water's flowing from kind of this corner here, like across the way. You see how the contour lines are going. Miss Kashmir's brought up that this is contour lines before this home was built. So the contour lines on this property are different and they're closer together because Phil was brought in. So we are requesting that the engineer update the contour lines to actually more realistically indicate where the water's going. The water does typically go, like I said, kind of northwest, and then through kind of a lower area in through here. And so Luigi did add the stormwater retention area here. But he hasn't really done a stormwater analysis or anything like that yet.
Can you just point to it again, please? Because I missed it.
Yeah, and he also has there's different contour lines in the as-built drawings for 943 than this drawing shows, and I think that's what Ms. Kashmir.
Back right of the property.
Right here, he did pencil in a
Oh,
stormwater
those-
retention
those
area.
those for the existing one. What about the one that is the one that was built? Where is the storm on that one?
So that was not a subdivided lot. It was an existing lot of record. And so it didn't have to go through planning board or CAC or anything like that. The developer is just allowed to pull the building permit for a single lot of record.
Okay.
Is that the
They do
same
not-
developer, Laura?
It is not the same developer. The developer on the single family home is a family of developers, the Greiners. The developer on this parcel, on your application you can see is Roberto Suelia. He did, I think, 838 Pierce Road, 734, 738 Pierce Road. That used to be a little home set back from the road with a lot of pine, like white pine trees in the front. And the planning board had asked, and tree council had asked for those white pine trees to remain, and they were removed. That house wasn't sitting completely in the middle of the lot. It was a little bit to the side, but and that parcel may have been slightly bigger than this one, but it's kind of similar to this one. This one I think is smaller.
Would you be able to trace with your mouse, like kind of the contour of the existing house in that red
Yeah,
box?
you can see it. It's labeled on here. I might. The existing house contour is right here.
Okay.
So you can see that the proposed lot line is literally going through right the middle of the existing house.
Okay. And the existing house was occupied until 2 years ago, from
Or even a year ago.
about a year ago. The concept of demolishing an existing house to build a higher number of houses is troubling to me.
Okay. Any other comments?
Can you please, just retell me why the trees in the back need to be taken down? Why the barn needs, I mean, they're taking down the barn just because it's not aesthetically pleasing and.
So at the planning board level, the planning board had actually asked them to consider saving at least some of the barn because one of the planning board members felt like there was some historic value to the barn. There is a back section of the barn that is in pretty rough shape, according to the planning board member that did a site visit. But the developer, I think, after reviewing it and changing the plans a couple times, is now proposing to take it down.
So let me ask a question. Is that barn part of the original Pierce estate farm? Does anybody know that?
We do not know that for sure.
We don't know that.
No.
And why do you have to take down, so why is the clear cutting in the back necessary then? I guess I'm missing that. If you're building two houses in the front, you're taking down a house right in the middle of it. Why are we cutting down?
So they're not actually proposing to cut the trees in the back. Although I've said this at the planning board meeting before too. I mean, without some stronger rules, it's very difficult to enforce the tree clearing. Where the planning board is very concerned about trees coming down is actually on the northern property line here. In the packet, there's a picture of it. So this is in the front going along the road, and you might be able to save this line of evergreen trees here, but all of these trees in here would have to be removed. This chunk of them right here. The planning board was trying to get them to push the house back as far as possible to save more of those trees, but it's pretty tight. And even if we mark those trees to be preserved, it's really, really hard once they get in there with their machines to protect them.
Is that the house in question, the white one?
Yes, this house on the left, the white one, is the one that they're proposing to demolish.
I think if you look on Google Maps, I just pulled it up. It's really helpful to see what the arrangement looks like. I don't know if you can pull
Yeah,
it
I
up
can.
quickly, Laura, but that's the house, the developing lot there. There's Brookshire there. There's the barn.
Where's the barn?
I believe it's right there. I'm sorry, no, it's right there.
Oh, the
Right there.
one.
Yeah, I don't know. You can pass that down if people want to look at that.
So, I mean, we said this last time. I don't think it's a good precedent to take down a house to build two houses. I don't think it's a good, I think it's a very slippery slope. This is not how Niskayuna was designed to be. It was where it's, this is not the idea.
Yeah.
It's not the idea.
What I'm showing is that's an overview, so you can
Yeah.
just get an
I
idea of
have
what it
driven
looks
by a
like.
couple of
Yeah.
times. Yeah.
You have it? Would you like to see it?
You can kind of see the barn in the back. That's the barn in the back.
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
I was concerned about the statements made by the speakers at the privilege of the floor that the house was intentionally abandoned after purchase. Is anything known about the condition of the house at the time of sale?
No, because sales are private civil actions that the town is not involved in. We don't go in and document the condition of the home during a private sale. If there's a code violation, we will go out, and I did make note of open windows and doors to double check, but they may be secured at this point. If there's a non-security issue, the town would get involved, but we wouldn't document conditions pre and post sale. Not a service that we do.
Okay, thank you.
I have another question about the stormwater retention area next to the barn.
Mhm.
So if the barn were to removed, is the area going to be affected? Because if that's going to be affected, then 2488 Brookshire Drive where you live will be further affected by the stormwater.
So if this subdivision were to proceed, it would have a full engineering study with the stormwater analysis. It's currently at sketch plan, and the subdivision is not code compliant. So it has to go to the zoning board of appeals. It cannot proceed without relief from the zoning code. It's 5 feet deficient on both lots. Most of the time, you won't get a full engineering report until if and when it gets a granted to have that reduction in frontage by the zoning board of appeals. The engineer has drawn on as an example a stormwater retention area near that barn, and if the subdivision was to proceed, the engineer would have to say, okay, well, actually right now the barn is impervious surface, so you would be removing impervious surface. What are you putting there? How much, retention are you building with your retention pond? Where's the water flowing? Is there going to be a berm? We don't have those kind of details, which is why in my agenda statement I said on this one it may not be ready for a full environmental assessment recommendation to the planning board yet because you don't have all those details, but you may want to do a recommendation to the zoning board of appeals, and that is not necessarily going to be engineering related, although I think you could easily say that you have drainage concerns. You're really going to be looking at what the impacts to the neighborhood are for allowing less than code compliant lots to be made on this parcel.
So I think my biggest concern is the precedence that this would set. Right after that is the water issue, I think. But I am very concerned that this will change the character of the neighborhood along Pierce Road. Has the potential to do that. And also it has the potential to change the character of a lot of R1 areas, because I don't know how we could differentiate between this particular parcel and another parcel within Niskayuna. I also don't see a hardship here. I mean, the applicant bought a lot with a house on it and wants to take down that house and put 2 houses there. I think that's very different than buying a piece of property and fixing a house that you want to live there, or putting another house that's integral to the area. So this is a very different request in my mind.
So can I just ask a question? So before us, we have had housing and drainage issues, and we have made suggestions and we've put in, but we have never gone back through and had anyone ever come back to us and say, hey, they're not working, or it's not working. And while the original home that was built on the property where they brought in all the sand, and that has caused issues for neighbors, I myself had this happen to my home, so I understand. But what I'm asking is that when something has been built and we have said it's okay, what is the policy of the town? If somebody says, hey, it is not draining properly, or the water retention is not working, is that when we go check it and say, okay, this needs to be fixed, or is that how it works?
Yeah.
Okay.
If the house is built to the plans that were approved by the planning board, town board, building department, engineering department, and they're not executed, then I think the town will work to get the plans to be brought into compliance. But like, for instance, a little farther down the road, that one I think is 838, the Meppen subdivision. The planning board was very concerned about the wetlands in the back. They looked at a number of configurations with that parcel. It went through a number of iterations. And so there was a lot of focus on the wetlands and how things were going to be built. And they didn't you're looking at a whole lot of things, but I've said this before, they kind of missed the contours on that, and I did too. So that house is actually approved by planning board to be that much taller than the adjacent home, if it's approved by planning board to have that fill, then the building department can't not allow it. It's by a right. Like they've got those contours engineered, designed, approved. The building department can't say we think that's a bad idea. At that point, it's a go. So like that's why we have to be very, very careful with all things on the subdivision. Like we've been talking about making a checklist, because you can get very fixated on drainage, or you can get very fixated on wetlands or a particular issue, and then kind of lose track of contours or some other things that can happen on a subdivision.
So I have another question too on this. Since this is going to the ZBA, we are going to make a recommendation, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. And Chuck, do you have any comments you would?
Yeah, can you all hear me now?
Yes, we can, loud and clear.
Excellent, thank you. No, I just echo some of the statements previously made. My concern is, and this is based on the design or on the drawing that we have presented to us, is that I think each one of the two homes that is projected to fit this area would on their own be larger than the existing home that's already there. And I believe that unto itself is a statement of not wanting to comply with the character of the neighborhood. So I think that right there, to me, is a challenge for approving and agreeing with this plan. Dart's statement, we're right on. If somebody were to buy the land, keep the plot, build a house on the on a similar footprint with a similar size, fair enough. But I think this is clearly an effort to significantly change the character of the neighborhood. And with that as the primary goal, I could see the ancillary effects being water damage and cutting down trees without care as to whether the town wants that to happen or not. We've seen that throughout Niskayuna. It's a problem in our town that our builders don't respect these desires that we have. But so anyway, I'll just leave it at that. I think clearly this is beyond the character of the existing neighborhood. So thank you, Dart. Thank you, team.
I just want to make a clarification. The person building a house on a lot has to build within the zoning code, but there's no requirement that the house be the same size or the same style right now with the zoning code. So I just want to make that, it doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt the character of the neighborhood, but I just want to make sure we were clear about that. One last question I had, Laura, and I think we talked about this last time. The town has a ordinance for all homes older than 49 years old to be evaluated. Has this house been evaluated?
I believe that it has. They didn't find historical significance.
Okay.
I mean, I say that it's probably fair. Once I pulled up the Google Earth, it's pretty clear that the house next door is very old looking, and that was the first I'd heard that it's actually the Pierce Homestead. I'm sure it's documented as the Pierce Homestead, but I didn't realize that.
Mhm.
So it's actually, although this house itself may not be historic, I mean, it's directly adjacent to maybe the most historic house on the whole road, potentially. I'll have to look. I didn't know that.
You're talking about the Pierce house.
Yeah.
Normally that happens when someone puts in an actual building permit to demolish a house. It goes through a process of going to the
Yeah.
Historic Preservation Committee. But I think in this case, because there was talk of that, I think it has already gone through that process, but we can double check.
I thought we brought it up last time.
Yeah, I think it.
No, we did, but I didn't realize it was Sears house from 1910. I mean,
We'll double check it.
Yeah. When is the ZBA going to meet?
So, the planning board has action on the sketch plan on Monday. I think possibly regardless of the planning board action, they may still do an appeal to the zoning board, which at the very minimum would go in April.
I'm somewhat confused. So they have to go before the ZBA,
Yeah, no matter what, they
no
will.
matter what.
Yeah, it's a theoretical possibility that the planning board could disprove the sketch plan. I did bring up your concerns to them, and I know that maybe not all, but some of the members, my opinion stating here, may have some similar concerns. So I definitely don't think whatever they vote is going to be unanimous. I don't know. But even if they do say no to the sketch plan, I think the developer still has the right to bring the appeal to the zoning board.
Yeah, the reason why I'm asking, I'm just asking what is the best way for us to proceed, in a sense that we don't have a full sketch plan here. There's multiple issues. We can talk to some issues better than others.
Yeah, so my recommendation would be you have the EAF for the subdivision now. It's a short form EAF because it's a minor subdivision. And I don't really expect anything to change before it goes to the Zoning Board of Appeals because you've seen it for a number of meetings. I would be comfortable recommending to you guys that you could do a seeker recommendation to the zoning board. I think you would want to withhold a seeker recommendation to the planning board until if and when it comes back to the planning board and you can get a better sense of the drainage and the engineering drawings to handle some of the concerns that we're hearing from residents.
Yeah, no, that was my concern there. So what we could do is we could make a recommendation based on the information we have today.
Yeah, on sketch plan and area variance request.
Does the committee feel comfortable in making a decision that way?
I have a question. Hope
Yeah,
you
sure.
can clarify. So from the February planning board meeting, the builder seemed to agree to revise the contour lines.
Yeah.
So would that address the drainage and flooding water problem the two residents proposed raised?
No, what the builder agreed to do from the planning board meeting is make the contour lines actually reflect what's existing today.
Mhm.
There aren't right now particularly strong proposed contour lines to the subdivision because it's still in sketch plan. What the planning board wanted him to do was put existing contours on. So that's not going to impact the proposed drainage because it's actually already out there. It's not talking about what they will do with this land. It's the surrounding land to make what areas surrounding this the most accurate as possible for a better picture for the boards to make a decision on.
Yeah, part of the process is, it's an economic issue, is that you don't want to do full plans if you don't have approval to proceed. And the ZBA, they still have to go through the ZBA.
Right. And then the problem with the slope.
So the ZBA is looking at an area variance. These lots are supposed to have 100 feet if you're going to create a new lot. They have 95 each.
Right.
So they're going to look at 5 factors that they're required by law to look at. Whether the variance is self-created, whether the variance creates negative impact to the neighborhood, if it has any environmental impacts, if there are alternatives, if they've been explored. They have a number of things that they have to go through. That is what we can make our recommendation on to them. And then if those variances are granted, then the minor subdivision goes back to the planning board. They would have to do the engineering. They would have to call a public hearing. They'd have to do all of the things that we normally see for a subdivision. They just haven't gotten there yet because the sketch plan has been challenging and because the zoning board still has to make a determination.
So I'll ask the question again. Does the committee feel comfortable making a recommendation on the sketch plan tonight for the ZBA?
Yes.
Okay. With that, I would entertain a motion. Would someone like to make a
Wait, we
motion?
gotta go through the questions. I'm pulling them
I'm
up.
sorry?
Questions.
Oh, you
have
want to do the
go through
questions? Yeah.
form.
Okay. I didn't know if we were going to actually do it that way.
I like to do it that way so
Okay,
that
that's
we
fine.
do them equal. I will write up the findings for the zoning board. Okay, So will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulation?
Yes.
Moderate to large.
I say the potential is large.
Do you want to talk about the potential issues of,
Yeah, I think I would base it on the analysis that the planning board did, that there's substantial lots in the area, and that it could create a higher density, changing the character of the neighborhood. But if we just talk about, the impact on the zoning, basically it could open the door for basically a de facto zoning change for the area and the town. I mean, in my mind, there's nothing unique about this property that cries out that they need to do this.
okay, will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use of land?
Well, there are two houses now instead of one. That is almost the definition of change in intensity.
Yeah, so increasing the density.
Yeah.
With potential to create more density.
And I would say that a moderate to large impact could occur because, again, this gets down to setting the precedent in the area.
Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community?
Well, here's where I'd like to, include the concern about setting a precedent about like destroying one house to construct other houses, and here the existing community not just relates to the community around Pierce Road, but it in fact extends to the town as a whole.
I just realized I can see these better than you guys can. Ooh, whoopsie. Will the proposed action, oh, sorry, so that was a yes, right, Ashok?
Yeah, that's
okay.
most, yeah.
Will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics caused by the establishment of a critical environmental area? And usually no, because we
Yeah,
don't
I would
have
say
any of
that's a
those.
no.
And Laura, when you mark the boxes, you're also adding the text, right, for the ZBA to have context.
Yeah, because I can't actually write it on this sheet. So what I typically do is copy these questions over,
Okay.
and then I make our answers as our findings, and I
Yep.
put those in the part 3. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkways?
I think that's minimal.
Yeah, and the Complete Streets is also requesting a sidewalk, so that one is probably a no. Will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy, or does it fail to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities?
Well,
From the site plan, we have no information.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe this is a little stretch, so like rein me in if you think this, but we do know that when you demolish these homes, it's it's going to a landfill. It's actually quite energy intensive to take them down and build new ones. I think we could probably find figures on what the
Yeah, that's
energy
what I
losses
was
for like
thinking too.
removing a home and then building a new one versus like rehabbing an existing home. I mean, at some point, sometimes the existing homes are gone and you have to take them down. But I do think that on the balance of energy conservation, you are probably on the side of not being very conserving of energy if you're taking down an existing home to build new ones too.
Agreed. I was thinking the same thing.
Okay.
Well, and also wouldn't 2 homes, especially if they're larger homes, potentially be more energy consuming than the one existing home that is much smaller? I don't know if that's part of this calculation or not.
Yeah, I mean, we always talk about it. It's a little hard when you're doing an unlisted action because a lot of people think seeker has to be much bigger environmental impacts, but we're so built out I feel like it is important to lay out these environmental impacts, and then the boards can take our recommendation as they see fit. So I think we should put both things in.
Yeah, there's gonna be 2 driveways, there's gonna be 2 rooftops, you know what I mean, like.
Will the proposed action impact existing public-private water supplies, public-private wastewater treatment utilities? I believe, we don't have the information on that sketch plan, but I believe that there's water and sewer in front of this house. That's probably a no. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources?
I think you got to put unknown for that.
Unknown.
Unknown,
Okay.
because we don't, I mean, did we really go out and look at it? Do we really understand what the implications are? And if that is the Pierce house next door, what does that mean? I think there's a broader question there.
Okay. Okay. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources, wetlands, water bodies, groundwaters, air quality, flora, and fauna? So I'm just going to remind you guys, we consistently focus on wetlands, water bodies, flora and fauna, and then the drainage we typically address in the next
Yeah.
question.
There is clearing of trees.
So you want to put small?
Yeah, I think it's going to be small. The reason why I think it's small and I is just because a lot of the property right now is, well, I think we can enforce or recommend at a later, that can be mitigated, I think.
It's not as much clearing as we've seen in some.
Yeah, I think that can be mitigated if it ever comes back to us.
Can I ask a question on
Yeah.
the comment of digital mapping information on local and federal wetlands and water bodies is known to be incomplete? So if that's true, then the answer would be
I mean, we can look at the DEC wetlands mapper, or ask the applicant to do a full wetland determination on this subdivision.
so. Where is that comment coming from?
I'd say that it's generally like if, we do, like, for instance, on the next, maybe the next one isn't really a good example, but Clark and I were just looking at one on Pierce Road, and there's a full wetland delineation in the subdivision. So when you're looking at it, is the subdivision impacting wetlands? Like, that's what that question's getting at. Some subdivisions that get sent to the CAC actually do propose to fill and grade and build roads through wetlands. This one is not identifying any wetlands and not proposing to do that, but you do always want to look and see what's happening with wetlands.
So I kind of just want to say that I know that, we always push for them to keep more trees, but if it really isn't in our scope of being able to do that, then I have to think that we maybe should start assuming the worst and mitigating
Agreed.
backwards. What?
I mean,
Because
agreed. I
feel
think-
like-
yeah.
I feel like this, always hoping for the best and being disappointed is, we're going round and round continually. And so I think we need to be more upfront about what actually could happen. And so if they have the possibility to clear cut all that land, then they can do it. And then that would be a large adverse change to natural resources. if
Yeah,
They
that-
have the ability to do it.
I definitely hear what you're saying, Ellen, but the existing homeowner without the houses could go and clear cut the property.
Yes.
Right. So the way I look at this is just specifically the action, right? So the action is putting the 2 houses there. And if you look at clearing, around the house, maybe, 20 feet, 25 feet around the house, maybe more in the back. But again, I think we've got to sort of be careful about assuming the absolute worst every single time. We just disagree on that. That's all.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Um,
That's all right.
But I think if this were to come back to us with the subdivision, actual subdivision, then I think we could definitely say, you know, we want trees preserved and stuff like that. And certainly that would be in our preview.
I mean, we have had this conversation though at the planning board. We need to either change the enforcement before the home moves to building permit. So tagging the trees, getting values, taking escrow before rather than trying to catch them after or stop them during. It's very challenging at that time to then try and protect what was promised to the planning board. And oftentimes it's like a promise, not a regulation. And that has been really challenging.
I mean, I think it's a concern, but I think there's a lot of bigger concerns that are, I'll go to the next one.
Okay, so will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems?
I would think the potential is there. The area has existing drainage issues.
Yeah, I think that's really fair to say. Because just a reminder, the seeker, yeah, it's environmental impacts. We know if there's existing drainage problems that development could have impacts, and the whole point of a seeker is to slow down and look at alternatives. Will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health?
The first column, like mild, not a major concern.
Okay.
Are there any other concerns that we haven't talked about?
So I mean, it just long as what we have, we don't have all the information, so we're just, kind of shooting into the wind. So I just want to make sure that, it reiterates the same stuff that we said. Nothing has been answered from the 2.5. Like that's all still kind of
Right.
out
This
there, except for we have kind of determined that there is a larger scope. There is quite a number of homes that that this could happen to.
Yeah, so this is a recommendation to the zoning board on the impacts to the neighborhood, negative impacts to the neighborhood potentially from of variance.
Okay.
So are we ready to entertain a motion?
Yeah.
Okay. Does somebody want to make it?
So this is just a motion to go to the zoning board. So-
Well, we're going to give either a positive deck or a negative deck on this.
So based on the number of yeses, it would be unusual to do a negative deck in this situation. Although I do understand that a positive deck on a 2-lot subdivision is also unusual. But
I mean, I'll make a motion. We've been discussing this for about an hour, and we have heard a number of significant adverse effects. And as Laura pointed out, there are significant check marks in the major impact column. I therefore make a proposal to give this project a positive declaration from the Conservation Advisory Council.
Yeah, I would second that, and I would basically elevate the point that this would set a precedence for future subdivisions in this area, and that it could potentially change the character of not only the Pierce Road area, but because there's nothing unique about this particular property other than the applicant wants to take down an existing building and put 2 houses on it, it would be very hard to stop that in other parts of the town as well. So, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously.
okay, great.
Okay, let's move on to the second EAF, and that is 2025-03, and that is a two-lot subdivision, 2727 Balltown Road, and we have seen this before, and as you may recollect, it is next to the old Aqueduct Veterinarian Hospital, which was converted to a apartment building. And the owner of the house, the existing house, would like to subdivide the lot into two lots that Laura is showing there. One lot would have an 80-foot frontage, which meets the zoning requirements for this particular area, and the other one would have a substantially more, I think it's 168, if my memory serves me right. And I think our discussion last time, there were a couple things. One of them was that the town typically doesn't like triangular lots, but other than that, the houses can fit in the fit within the building space. The other, I think, issue that was raised was the number of curb cuts on Balltown Road. That's a very busy road. And that's why the zoning was RP, to try to minimize that. That's residential professional, but it does fit in within the zoning. So, do we have any discussion on this?
Just a couple more points. This one did receive sketch plan approval from the planning board. Does not require zoning board action. And because it's a subdivision, they will need to make seeker determination prior to calling a public hearing. So at this meeting, it is requested to do a seeker determination on it.
Okay. So Laura, could you remind us, there were some concerns about wetlands in the back.
Mhm.
It's not impactful to the neighbors because I think it rises in the back.
Yeah, so I'll just zoom in on this. They, out of precaution, did put 100-foot buffer on the delineated wetland. There is a note on here that in the National Wetlands Inventory, it's a freshwater pond and it's not regulatory wetlands. I pulled up the New York State DEC mapper on this. As you guys know, and Clark can talk about this a little when we look at some of the training that we've taken. When you pull up the new New York State DEC wetland mapper, it's not gospel, but it does show a purple wetland in this area. So I may disagree that with that note, not regulatory wetlands, I don't think that note should be there, but regardless of that, they are showing 100-foot setback to it. So that's would be what was required if it was a regulatory wetland. And even with that 100-foot buffer, it's only just hitting the very tip of this lot and isn't affected by the addition of another single family home. Long-winded answer to your question.
No, that's fine.
I don't love the note, but it does look like even with a buffer that would be required, it's not impacting the wetlands. I do think for the record though, when the planning board's looking at it, they should probably require like a split rail fence or something back there. One of the things that we have talked a lot at the planning board level about with this house is that it appeared that the first floor elevation, finished floor elevation was quite a bit higher. This one is proposing to maintain the existing home, so they're not taking down any home. This is the existing home. The existing home is quite tight against the northern property line. Where they're proposing to put a new home has been just open field for the last 100 years. Long time.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I said was kind of a hard lesson learned on Pierce Road was how much taller some of those new houses are than the old houses. And so what we didn't want to happen is that this is a beautiful existing house and this is, this footprint is quite a bit bigger and they're adding fill and contours like, was just discussed by the members of the public. When you add the fill and the contours, that gets very problematic for the adjacent neighbors. So we're trying to work on getting this house to come down to be within 2 feet of the existing home, 1 foot to 2 foot of the existing home, so that it's not so different. They've talked about making it a walkout basement, but we don't want them to add fill to make it a walkout basement. Like, use the lot that you're given. Don't bring in fill to make a walkout basement is one of the things that we were talking about. And we were talking about planting trees. There's a lot of utilities here right along Balltown Road. It's a really tough spot to put trees, but we did ask for more trees to be planted on the lot and asked for a sidewalk easement.
So the house, the road elevation looks like it's 364.
Yes. And the finished floor elevation, oops, I'm pulling up the wrong one. Clark actually has a new one in here, which he circled.
It's 366.
Yeah, I think he did modify that since the planning
Yeah.
board first kind of objected to the finished
Height.
floor elevation.
Yeah. So now I think it still needs to come down a little, but it's 366 versus 369. The planning board wants it to be within 2 feet, so it's still got to come down a little. And I do think that's important. I'm
So what's the difference between the ground floor and the, was that the first floor elevation?
so
Or
some
GFF versus-
people say GFF for ground floor, but Luigi is intending this as garage floor.
Oh, okay.
And,
So it's 368. Okay. So
yes.
it's 4 feet higher.
Yeah, because this is the garage floor over here for the detached garage, but he's got the garage floor elevation there because it's it's inside the house there, that garage. It may be like inset down a little bit with some steps to the home, which a lot of garages are like that.
And on the north part of the property, is there concern about water shutting down, going to the neighbors? Is there going to be a swale there or something?
He's got a little swale. This adjacent neighbor is the old Aqueduct Animal Hospital, now apartment building.
Yep.
There is I wonder if I can bring it up. There's a pretty large section of forest, really, between these guys and the next neighbor. And the next neighbors behind them, are actually on quite a hill. So if you're driving down Balltown Road, I'll see if I can pull it up really quickly. But these houses are pretty close to the elevation of Balltown Road. Then it drops down, and then it goes pretty significantly up to the new homes that were built by Amador on.
Yeah, no, I was specifically looking at
Let me pull it up.
if the house is at 368 and you go down towards the existing house that's going to remain on the subdivision, potentially at the back of the house, you could have an 8-foot drop towards that property line. Or am I reading that wrong? Is that where he's talking about having the finished basement?
Give me a number.
I don't know how that's going to finish on the house.
Yeah, so he's definitely got a swale along the old Aqueduct vet line.
Yeah.
This is definitely a swale that's picking stuff up and bringing it back here. This is a little less defined.
Yeah.
Where were you asking the question on?
No, that's the property line, the one on the top as well. I mean, if you're at 165, 164, you're going down to 163. I mean,
363?
I'm looking at the contours, right? So if you look at the one that breaks, you got a 365 contour that breaks about 1/3 into the house,
Mhm.
right? And if you go down past where he has the maple there, that looks like it's like 163, 162 on the existing lines.
Yeah.
So water is definitely going to shed that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, no, you're
That's a good point.
yeah, I think you're right about that. That kind of comes back to they are still bringing that house up. They definitely are.
It's pretty high.
Yeah. it is still pretty high. That's good observation.
I mean, that kind of brings up an interesting point to that one question in the EAF form. You would think this seems like it does have the potential to produce an effect. It may be mitigated though by some
That's
proper
true.
stormwater practice, but the potential
As,
could very well be there if unmitigated.
yeah, as those
It
contour
may-
lines go.
And it brings up that Laura had mentioned earlier, the ongoing discussion of when do you get into that level of detail? Like, how much stormwater design do you do at the sketch plan stage?
I feel like it is a real fair point, though.
It should be brought up and.
It should be
logged.
mitigated. It should be
Yeah.
mitigated.
Yeah,
I mean, we're going to have a town designated engineer on this one.
Yeah.
It is going to need an engineering review. It's probably unlikely that that'll be done. If you guys,
Well, the problem is like in the public hearing, if people come up and say, hey, there's a stormwater issue, right? There is.
I mean, it's wet there. I
Yeah.
drive by that every day. It's on the way home to my house. Here, I'll show you guys. I don't know if you can really see it, but it's wet in the back. You might even be able to see it better, like if I actually zoom out to the. There's a definite wet area that runs back along all of these houses. You know, in true Niskayuna fashion.
Yeah.
Like when you the pond is like over in here, and like the water runs back behind all of these houses. You might even be able to see it better like over here. You see the wet back here? This is like
Mhm.
probably like cattails or phragmites. These houses sit up by the road. They're a little higher, and then like I say, it dips back and there's a lot of water, and then it goes back up again.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now.
It might even be. Yeah, it's not insignificant. I mean, it's likely very poor soils, you know, with a lot of drainage. Here's the pond. Where's that? I mean, they look like wetlands to me. Here's where the wetlands kind of stretch up behind these houses. And then it comes over to this E1 driveway. This all in here is pretty darn wet.
Yeah, I'm actually not concerned necessarily about the back of the house. I mean, I think it's pretty much going to sit there,
Yeah. But
Right.
between the neighbors.
but between the neighbors.
yeah, it's a good point.
This is the existing house. That's the driveway on your plan. And this is the area where they're proposing the single family home. Drop my little person here. Oops. Here.
Well, what would the committee like to do here? Do we feel we have enough information to make a recommendation? Or do you want to go through the checklist?
I have a comment to make. It seemed like the engineer didn't want to address the concern about it's 6 feet higher than the neighboring, because in their second revision, the concerns were raised about that. And then in their third revision, they added 1 more foot instead of taking down the footage.
Yeah, you know, at the meetings, he has mentioned that he doesn't like to build houses below grade to the road. Poor engineering practice, according to him. But the issue is, you know, with that some of the existing homes are below grade to Belltown Road. So new engineers like to raise houses 2 feet above the grade of the road, because then you get positive drainage and all as well. I actually think New York State building code requires positive drainage to a house. And you know, we're saying that when you don't take into account the adjacent homes, you build these homes on hills, and the planning board was calling them like a grew house, you know, because it's like normal house, and then there's a house on a hill, and it's like this big, and that it really is damaging to neighborhoods.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. So
No,
can there be any regulations on that? Or
Yeah, well, I'd say the regulation that we have is good subdivision review, making sure that the grades are right before we approve any new building lot. Right now, there is not a building lot there. It is not allowed to have a single-family home. It is allowed to submit a subdivision application, but the subdivision, our job is to make sure that the subdivision does no harm, right? So,
There's another, so I'm looking at the Google Maps flat part of it. And that house, if you look at the both neighboring houses, it's going to be much, much higher. But I noticed something else. There's actually a drainage path off Balltown Road that runs right where the house is going to be put in. You go to the 2D plot, or you'll see it.
this one,
No.
what are you looking at?
So this is the parcel right
Oh,
here,
like
and looks like there's a feature that goes off and sheds water from Balltown Road right in there. It would be right between that tree and the house on the road. Maybe if you zoom in, you might see it.
How do you get that view?
You hit 3D to 2D.
I'm sorry, I'm not always that great.
Your computer may differ, you know.
I don't see it. Well, let me put my person. Maybe you can see it from this view.
If you see it, well,
some options that are like
although when you look at 2D, I'm not quite sure I'm seeing exactly, that might be a bush.
Well, I do see
It does look like there's something there.
there's like a manhole or something here. Look.
So this will be the.
Oh,
first
no, I
home.
think that's a catch basin.
Is there?
Yeah, look, it has holes on top. Yeah, you're right. Don't you think that's a catch basin, Clark?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. There is something there. Oh, I'm not. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. There. That is right where you were pointing, Dart, and I can't zoom in on it anymore. But that's definitely a catch basin right
You
there.
think it is?
Definitely.
Yeah, you can see it on her screen.
Okay.
So yeah, I would say there must be some kind of storm collection system. Oh, that's an open topped catch basin. So it may not overtop. It may collect into a stormwater. I mean, I'm comfortable because this is actually a minor subdivision application that is going to have engineering, like we were saying. I was originally thinking timeline-wise, it would be a good time, but if you guys need a little more engineering and stormwater analysis of this parcel, I think it'd be okay to defer it one more meeting. Yeah, I think so.
This is gonna be the first house that's gonna be built along this. This is gonna be the first new construction on this road too.
I think that's okay. Clark and I can work a little more on the contours and the stormwater impacts and some of the engineering and utility, and then you guys can look at it.
Yeah, actually, I'm not sure that's the catch basin's actually there, but we should verify that.
Yeah.
And to me, this approach makes sense because we did something similar with this 2-lot subdivision on Polsinelli Drive,
We did.
where we did work with the applicant to go into a fairly significant amount of stormwater analysis, even at the sketch plan stage, just so that they knew what they were getting into too. So we have
Yeah.
done this before.
We just want to make sure that they build this house, and if it's going to be mounted up so high that
Yeah.
we're not going to flood the neighbor.
We'll
bring this one back to you in April.
Okay.
929 will not likely come back to you in April because you have made the zoning board recommendation and they would take action in April. So if you were to see that one again, it would be at the earliest in May.
Yep.
But let's Clark and I will bring 2727 Balltown Road back to you in April with some more of that information.
Okay.
And just a quick question, Laura, the land across Balltown Road there, is that all GE's land?
That is all GE's land. Yep. Well, a tiny bit is National Grid where those big power lines are.
Yeah.
But
Right.
what you're seeing when you look to the side, that's all GE land.
Okay.
Can,
Thank you.
can I ask for clarification of the archaeological site? What kind of archaeological site?
So that when you have DEC map your short form EAF and automatically fill it, it will pretty much in Niskuna almost always hit that.
Always.
Because there's a lot of archaeological sites in Niskuna within. We certainly could request a SHPO letter on this one if we needed to. But that is not I can't even think of a short form environmental assessment that doesn't have the potential for an archaeological site marked.
The previous one didn't.
It didn't all the way down on Pierce Road. That's interesting. That is actually, unless he didn't use DEC to fill that out. I can check, but if you trust the computer to fill it out, it'll almost always mark that one, yes. But it's another thing we'll ask them. We'll ask them for a SHPO. I like how
Oh yeah, sorry. The previous one did. Yeah, I missed it. Yeah.
didn't
Yeah, it
mark
didn't
this.
have- yeah.
It didn't, which is interesting because it's right next to possibly the Pierce Road farm.
Right. Yeah, yes. Yeah.
Well, we'll look at that on that one too. Yeah, that's always a good point. I'm glad you're reading the form so closely.
So we'll see it back.
Yep.
Okay. Let's,
So for planning
go ahead.
project,
discussion items.
yeah, the planning project, it didn't make it in time to go on here, and I don't think it'll be a whole lot of CAC review, but the GE Vernova is doing patio upgrades to their building, which you guys looked at not that long ago. That new one that they're doing the greenhouse gas capturing. They're connecting it to their office building, and they're putting an basically like sort of like an outside office, outside gathering area. It looks very nice. So we'll let you know if that needs to go through a seeker review on the next meeting. And then the Niskuna Harbor PUD application, they are probably going to come in April, so be prepared for April.
So
They-
the town board approved that?
The town board did approve them to submit their application. We did ask if they wanted to come to the CAC tonight with an update, but they don't really have one yet. They're still working on the wetlands. The wetlands is still a huge question on that one. But they did think that they would be coming in April. And then 2339 Troy Schenectady Road, Harry's. I'm keeping it on here. You guys looked at the preliminary site plan. It has not changed since the last time you looked at it, nor been resubmitted to the planning board. We do think it's possible that that will go to the zoning board though in April. So again, that may be at least one recommendation to the zoning board on the area variance, use variance type situation there.
Okay. Good. So let's move over to the Climate Smarts Task Force. So Laura, where do we stand with the greenhouse gas emissions inventory?
Yeah, I have an email from Jim Yenger on that. He, I believe, has a new employee who's dedicating to working with us on that. But I have to reach out to him and get that contact information. I'd say it's about in the same place that it was last month, with the exception of possibly having a new employee.
NRI, Shuck. I reviewed the report. It was very good. Do you have anything you want to talk about it?
I'm I'm working on a nice summary / recommendations to the town board, and Joy, your email was very helpful. And Ellen, I promised to get it done this for today, but I didn't make it. My apologies. But I am making progress on it. Like a nice presentation and like a little pamphlet type thing that we can hand out to people with the recommendations. And I do think it's a good idea for us, myself and one or two people from this body, to address the town board and present some findings and provide some recommendations.
Okay.
Can we get on the town board's calendar, Laura? Like that will, in fact,
Yes, would
motivate
Yeah.
me.
April or
Yeah.
May?
He wants a deadline.
Yeah. I didn't say it, but yeah, April would be good.
April would be good.
Yeah.
So we are still doing the survey to collect some residents.
We finished up the money for this phase. This is the report of everything that was found. And then Ashok and I will need to submit another grant for more.
Mhm.
And like what we need to do, I think, for the next one is we need to get pre-approval from private property owners in order to be able to get grant funding to do the inventory. Because usually when they announce the grants, it's only a month or two, and it can be really hard to go out and get private property owners approval in that short a time frame while you're writing the grant.
Mhm.
So I think it would be good while we're waiting for the grant to come out to start opening up conversations with some of the private property owners and just talking to them what an NRI is and seeing if we can get a letter of okay from them.
So yeah, even without the funding, would it still be good to gather some feedback?
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up, Joy. Do you want to explain what you sent an email out to the committee? Do you want to talk to that?
Right. So NRI is definitely beyond environmental conservation, and then it can be viewed as some good initiative to improve well-being of the residents and the community. So I think gathering some feedback from those people who participated in the nature walks would be something that can help, right? Reinforce the initiative, reinforce the implementation phase, and help some future funding. And so this could be for future notice. It would be easily done at on site when we after the nature walks when we did it. So for future notice.
We can hand them the questions that you
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Now would be some post survey.
I also want to note that, like, informally, I've been talking to a bunch of town residents, and people do bring up this point about parks a great deal. I tell them about, like, the properties we surveyed, Brendan Lane and Avon Crest, and I'm always met with blank stares, like, oh, they exist. You need to find them, but they do exist. So it is pretty high on the residents' minds. And if you took a look at the comprehensive plan survey, the word parks is mentioned quite frequently along with green space.
So as long as probably a number of you who are on the walk with the NRI at the Fieldstone Estates trails, was very saddened that they were not accessible and that there wasn't a good way to get down. And I didn't think it was a shining moment for the town of Niskayuna in any way, shape, or form. My Girl Scout troop is working on their silver, and they decided to do an engineering thing. And I have run past my co-leader and a couple others that they may be willing to design and build stairs down. But one of the other things they have to do for their silver award is public outreach. So possibly in the building of the stairs, they could also work on how to notify people of that trail being there. But I think it would be really helpful for them to get from the CAC some of the points on why that's healthy, so that when they're sharing it with the public, they can show why that is a benefit to be approved, honestly, by Girl Scouts, but that it's like, it truly does have a public benefit to show people that the trails are there and make them accessible from the parking lot down to the actual walking area.
You know, I have travel April 5 to 10, but any other day would be fine in April. And you know, the chairman stress, right? Like if I have a deadline, something that's happening, then I'll get. And now I know I can ask Joy for help, and then I can have the materials ready for the Girl Scout groups.
Yeah, so they built a bridge, or they refinished a bridge in Clifton Park. They're very capable of the stairs. I really think they can do it.
Okay.
And I think that it's needed. So,
Some of those definitely need stairs.
How do they fundraise, Laura?
cookies, buy your cookies. That's how we build our projects.
Okay, I just wanted to circle back. Joy, was it your expectation that we send that survey out to the residents?
Yeah, so even without funding, if the residents care about the project and then the environmental initiative and their community well-being, they would still be willing to fill out.
So you want to send it out to the people that participated, or?
Just send out to a general email list what Ashok, right, sent out
Mhm.
to, and then I know some people got the invitation, got the flyers, didn't participate.
Mhm.
They can still provide some feedback in terms of outreach, how we can do better to do the outreach, especially to underrepresented communities.
That's a good point.
Okay.
I'm authorized to reestablish my Survey Monkey, so we can put. I mean, I have to. Anytime I do a public survey, it has to be run through.
Oh, has to be
Yeah.
not a Google form.
It could be Google Form, but I actually find Survey Monkey to be easier than Google Form.
Yeah,
Um,
we've already gone through this once.
Yeah, but any survey we do, the public has to be reviewed by our legal department.
Oh,
Yeah. But I read the survey. I didn't think there was too much in there that I don't think we'd have to make a whole lot of changes. And then
we can take out the money, the gift card incentive part, because I wasn't sure if there's any.
I actually don't think that's a problem if it's donated, which, I don't even mind donating something like that. But the town couldn't pay for it.
Right, okay.
So I had a question, and I think maybe we talked about this, but I think we should put this natural resource inventory on the website, town website.
Yeah, right? Even though he's labeled it as sort of final draft, just with the
Well,
word
once
draft on
we're
it.
sure that it is, the final, well, I don't, I think a final draft is fine. Do we expect it to change dramatically?
It's just, I don't know, if the town board adopt or acknowledge until it's final from the
Oh,
town board.
okay.
And we could put it on as draft, and then after Ashok does his presentation, we hopefully get a resolution, because we have our old NRI on our website right now. Well, it's not old.
Yeah,
Phase one.
I don't know. I think it's good to put it out there. I mean, a lot of effort went into it. And as long as we say it's a draft, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
Unless somebody else does. Okay.
What's the rationale for the green and the red highlighted species?
On his species list.
Yeah, like page 9.
Oops,
Oh.
I already passed it.
The highlights you're talking about.
Yeah, those.
So
Are they intended to raise some attention to some species?
green is definitely or was threatened species. I don't recognize anything on the red.
Well, we can certainly ask Jim. We shoot him an email.
Mhm.
As long as we're not sure, as long as we're sure that red doesn't mean, I'm not sure we saw it.
Well, so because probably most of you guys, I mean, bald eagles were on the endangered species list. They came back enough that they're just considered threatened now. Eastern bluebird. Oh, you can't read them because I can read them, but you can't read them.
Oh, here.
Oh, wait, he has it right here.
Yeah, he explained the red highlighted.
Where does it say?
Says it in the text right above.
Yeah. So those highlighted in red had been observed in Niskayuna in the 1980 to 1985 survey, but were not observed in more recent 2000 to 2005 survey
Mhm.
for the red ones.
So
Gotcha. So it's green.
immigration and immigration.
What, Chuck?
I was just going to say immigration and emigration.
Yeah. So green if they came back and red if they didn't come back.
They've left for good or for now.
Laura, for the potential meeting with the town board, would it be possible to have it in the second half of April? The town board meets twice a month, right?
Yeah, we can request the 25th for
Yeah, that would be correct.
presentation.
That would be perfect.
That can be a little hard from them because the 25th meetings can be long, but we'll ask.
Sure.
The alternate to the 25th would be the earlier meeting in April, which would be like the 15th or
Or we could do it in May.
8th. Yeah. They do prefer to have the presentations at the agenda meetings because they tend to be shorter, so they have a better attention span for presentation.
Well, the 8th, I'm traveling on the 8th. So we can do May. We can do May.
Okay, well, I'll bring it up at the Economic Development Committee meeting on Friday and see what date works the best for them.
Okay.
Are we ready to move on? Okay, ongoing initiatives, the land preservation tools, I again have not completed them. Maybe I do need a deadline. I've been working on some other things. Pesticide outreach, Ellen, do you have anything you want to? None?
No.
Okay,
Chairman?
Momo, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, unless somebody had an update because it's winter, I think these are more slow, and we could just jump to the presentation unless.
I was just going to go quickly through
Oh,
this.
okay.
Composting,
Wait, I had a quick update on the pesticides.
okay.
At the county level, Schenectady County Environmental Advisory Council, SCIAC, on which I sit, we recently adopted a resolution, a binding resolution to eliminate pesticide use on county properties. And it's going into effect this season. The county did not sign a contract with True Green. So, and then we meaning SCIAC, has been asked to come up with signage to, or rather in SCIAC, we proposed to put signage on county-owned parks and such so that people, when they see weeds, because they will see weeds, won't inevitably start asking questions like, why is the county neglecting this? So Charlie Davids, I forgot his name, who works in the county manager's office. So he's worked with some interns, and we have designs for signage and with QR codes and everything. So if ever there is a need for our committee to have similar signage, we have a nice template to work on.
That's great, Ashok, because I mean the county along the right of ways has sometimes, pesticides and herbicides.
The whole
Yeah, because the county has been a pretty tough customer on herbicides. I mean, we've seen them herbicide right along swales and all kinds of things.
Well, this includes pesticides, herbicides. There are, reasonable and well-deserved exceptions for, wasp nests and, dangerous things, and particularly problematic invasives. But in general, there is a resolution not using it for ornamental purposes.
And
Okay,
Ashok, that reminds me too, the GE Vernova project that Laura mentioned. She and I have had some conversations with a contact we have from GE Vernova who's in charge of their grounds and building. And there's a presentation of the patio that she mentioned for GE Vernova. And there's a lot of really native plantings, and there's a fair amount of landscaping that they have proposed with that. So we mentioned the meeting that the CAC had with GE a while ago now, and said that the intent of that was to periodically kind of check in. And it sounds like with all the energy and excitement at GE Vernova, there may be an increasing opportunity to kind of link the CAC up with some like-minded people at GE Vernova, because I mean, there's just, those two places are just buzzing with activity, the GE Aerospace and GE Vernova. So it might be a great time to try to schedule another meeting to connect more with them on some of the CAC initiatives.
Can you or Laura set up such a meeting? If the iron is hot, let's strike it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
we
was a
can do
good
that
point.
as we
Yeah.
get the patio project.
Just conversation.
going.
So the signages you mentioned, are those educational signages or people put in their own property to?
So they are educational signage. Signage, they're not very big or fancy. They're like the standard size and composition of your average political lawn sign. Just plant it in there. But there is a QR code and a URL that takes you to the SCIAC website at the county level, where people can read more. And the sign itself just says that it's a conscious decision. I don't know the exact wording, but the message is that it's a conscious decision to protect human and pet health.
Yeah, I wonder if that can be extended to the low mall to have some similar signage.
We do.
We do have.
We
do
do
have
have
that.
one
Yeah.
Yep.
We have signs, yeah, and they have QR codes.
that people can put in their lawn.
Oh, no, we can. So the Lomo, signs that we have are where the town has
The town,
initiated
mhm.
Lomo.
Yeah.
So, but we have not designed, we don't have anything for people to put in their
Yeah.
yards. We
Yeah.
have pesticide-free signs
Mhm.
that we created.
Yeah, my neighbor told me about Saratoga County has signages for people to put in their yard.
So the thing about Lomo is it's like a very sticky situation because you have to. So the science behind Lomo is that it is better to if you not to let your grass grow so tall in
Mhm.
May, like the no mow May,
Mhm.
because then the insects get used to that, and then at the end of May you chop it all down. So and then they have no home anymore that they spent all spring building. So it is actually better to leave your lawn at like 6 or 6 inches, or whatever you're comfortable with, and just leave it at that and constantly mow it at that, because then they know what they're getting,
Mm.
and or if you're going to leave something, completely leave it and don't mow it just twice a year, and that it's like before they get there and then after they leave.
But the town wouldn't allow it.
The town would allow definitely the 6-inch, 7-inch lawns, because you don't get sighted until 10.
Mhm.
And, no mow May, like Ellen had said, like allowing it to get to, 12, 15 inches high and then mowing it isn't super great for pollinators anyway. And if you have a limited section of your lawn, like if the rest of it's maintained, but you kind of have a designated spot where you're doing low mow, the town would probably be okay with that. Unrestrained growth across the entire parcel is an issue for neighborhoods, but areas of low mow and with a regular manicured lawn, even if it's a tall lawn, have typically been okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a couple on our street.
Yeah, the no mow May is actually what triggers the most problems with the town,
Mhm.
and actually is also not super great for pollination. So I mean, I think the original idea is spring is the most scarce time for pollination.
Mhm.
So if you don't mow your lawn, then they can get all the dandelions and everything and eat. But
Yeah.
yeah, it has the unintended consequence of they also move in and then you mow down all their homes. So yeah.
Yeah, so I think the information, probably it's good to make it more clear about the rationales. Because I heard a lot of people interpret no more maize to protect the bees, to let the bees have more flowers for
I mean, the best thing to
pollination.
do with bees is to actually grow a garden for them to
Yeah.
come to. So, but anyways, I will, maybe what we could do is we can create a thing to put out.
Okay, this is a really good conversation, but Clark has been patiently sitting here waiting to talk to us about a conference he went to and a particular presentation that he saw. So I would like to allow him to present to us.
Sure.
Did you have one more?
No, go ahead. So we really just wanted to make everyone aware of really some presentations that we have on file that everyone can access from a planning and zoning conference that was held in February in Saratoga. And there were 730 attendees at the conference. Three members of the planning board also attended. A fourth was scheduled to attend, but they were sick. But we all had a great time. Thanks to Laura for funding everyone going to it from the planning office. So we each selected 2 morning sessions and 2 afternoon sessions to attend. And I think there were 5 sessions at each, 5 potential presentations that you could watch at each session. The 4 that I chose were changes to the regulations of state wetlands that you need to know. And we touched on that a little bit earlier, and we'll just hit a couple bullet points on each one of these, but there's more information. We have all the slides with some notes that you could flip through at your own discretion later on. Also, know how to say no, which was very interesting, practical strategies for disapproval. And that was really not how to just say no to projects. It was how to properly make sure you're scrutinizing and vetting each project. And they had some interesting tools and methods to use to make sure that you're taking a hard look at every project and really scrutinizing it. The third session was record keeping, minute taking, and public meeting laws. That was just kind of the basics of minutes and record keeping. It was presented by a few office staff from, I think it was Ballston Spa, and they had some good tidbits and lessons learned over 30 years in the industry. And the fourth one was also interesting, striking the balance of parking and trees. Is your local code working with you or against you? And that was about something that we've discussed at the planning board and I think in the CAC about how a lot of the shopping centers have much more parking than they really need. So these were some strategies on how to utilize some of that. So I'll just touch a couple bullets on the 4 presentations that I went to. The state wetlands, we've mentioned that a couple times. Laura and I have both attended a couple webinars and a couple presentations, and with each one you get to understand it a little bit more. There's a lot of talk about these changes. They are in effect as of January 1st of 2025. There's a lot of kind of talk among people that they're going to be legally challenged and they're very restrictive, but they are in effect, and there's something that we have to follow right now. The big point for Niskayuna is that wetlands are considered to be of unusual importance if they meet any one of 11 newly established criteria. And if they fall under one of those 11 items, then they have a 100-foot buffer to the wetlands. And the one that really catches Niskayuna is within or adjacent to an urban area per the US Census Bureau. So their definition of urban area is different from what we might think of as an urban area. So basically all of Niskayuna is classified as an urban area. The presenter spoke about the Northway, I-87 from Saratoga on down, and they said that's all considered an urban area. And most of it, you wouldn't even think it's suburban, but it is an urban area by the census definition. So we really think that any wetland in Niskayuna is going to need a 100-foot buffer on it. So that's a pretty big change. And, you know, that we think that's going to play a role in things like Niskayuna Harbor and some other projects that are underway as of January 1st. There are some provisions for grandfathered or what they call transitional projects, but, you know, all that, there's a whole procedure on how you apply to the DEC and how this all unfolds. They really recommend that you work with a biologist to classify the wetlands. So we'll all be learning more as some of these projects work their way through this. So, but that was a very interesting presentation. Knowing how to say no, this was also very good. The presenters had 30 years of experience at Clough Harbor, and one was a land use attorney. Their 30-year off-the-cuff observation was that about 50% of projects are approved and they're not changed in any form or fashion. They talked about humans have a natural yes bias, that it's, you know, we're almost programmed to say yes. So you have to really work at scrutinizing things and making sure that you're following all the criteria and taking what's legally called a hard look at projects. So he was estimating 50% are approved unchanged, 40% are modified in some degree and then approved, and 10% should be denied, but less than 2% actually are. So it was just really about the yes bias and making sure you're taking a hard look at projects. So a couple tidbits: we're doing your homework and being prepared. They really advocated for a site visit so you're familiar with the property in question. Bring up the big issues first on projects early on, you know, kind of like what just happened with some of the EAF forms here. Really ask for alternative designs. I think the planning board is pretty good at that, you know, asking what does a code compliant design look like, or ask for an alternative design. It's okay to say, for me to support this project, I would like to see X, Y, and Z. Those are good steps. And they also talked about playing almost like point counterpoint on a project, or taking up one side intentionally to get a good, healthy debate. Again, to really show that you've taken a hard look and flushed out the project. So you can see some of the other highlights there, but these are all good presentations that we would recommend you track down the slides and flip through them for yourself. Minute keeping was pretty straightforward. Record keeping, I won't drag everyone through that now. They were big fans of checklists, though, and templates to make sure you have a consistent process. The striking a balance of parking and trees. This was given by a couple different speakers: a landscape architect, someone who had 25 years as director of planning, someone as a professional engineer in transportation, and then the Saratoga City arborist gave their thoughts. So Really, the main gist here was what they were calling developing gray fields. And they gave a presentation of, I think it was the Wilton Mall, where they had mapped, they had time stamped photographs of the Wilton Mall. And they just looked at, they could show that certain areas of the parking lot were never, ever used. And, even in the holidays, no one ever parked there. So rather than taking down trees to build a new site for some commercial space or something, they actually built some of them in the parking lot to better use that land. And that also facilitated better footpaths to travel within the parking area. So, those of us that attended this session, we thought of like Mohawk Commons and how it's just a big sea of parking lot, and no one would ever dare walk from store to store because all it is wide open cars going all over the place. So this was really interesting. They used a shopping center in Clifton Park and Wilton as examples. So, and they also commented on landscaping budgets. They mentioned the Druthers in Clifton Park had a $700,000 landscaping budget, which can do a lot of landscaping for that. But it was really interesting. And they talked a lot about how the codes and the projects have to work together. Sometimes you have to adjust your codes to allow some of that infill development and things like that. So we just wanted to let everybody know these presentations are available. We've mentioned it at the EDH PEC meeting. We mentioned the slides and the programs at the last planning board meeting. So we just wanted to make all the CAC members aware that as you're looking for training, keep that session in mind next year. We all enjoyed it. And again, we have all these on file, so you can flip through them if you'd like. We have all the presentations. So
Could you email it to the?
sure, yeah, sure.
Actually, I thought one thing was really interesting when Clark, you presented it on the Friday meeting. The thing about Druthers was that the open space is usable space for them, but they didn't have to provide parking for it because it wasn't inside the building,
Yeah,
which I thought, if you ever have a chance to go see that site, it's really well done. The Druthers in Clifton Park.
Yeah.
Just even driving by and just walking through it. It's really impressive. Okay, thank you, Clark.
good, sure.
So do we have anything else? Ellen, did I cut you short? Did you want to say
Oh,
something?
no, that's okay. So I guess, so when you left there, did you feel good about the, things that we were doing and have like, sort of like a checklist of things that you want to see us, like, like actionable items that we as a committee or, as a town could start moving towards, so.
Yeah, I think that we definitely felt like we wanted to expose more people to those sessions and the planning and make people aware of that.
Right.
I think it reinforced some things that we've had in mind that we're working to get to, especially in the area of checklists and just having a common process in some areas. And maybe just, the saying no is a delicate one, but just letting people know that saying no is not always a bad thing, and just that there's a process for taking a good hard look at projects, and just acknowledging that it's kind of hard to say no sometimes, and sometimes there's a good reason to say no, and that's not referring to any particular project. It's just thinking, we're a pretty built out community. So we all kind of tangentially talk about that a lot, but we're only getting more and more built out. So it's the focus on potentially limiting or saying no here and there is probably only going to grow. So it's just interesting to hear some techniques on what you can do or how to mitigate that. But that is a good point, because I had a note in here. There was an old trainer that, that I was exposed to, and when you had multi-day training sessions, he would always start each morning by saying, what did you do yesterday? What did you learn? And then how can you apply it? So I like that, Ellen, that I always try to think that way of, all right, that's great. You got exposed to some new things, but how can you put them into practice, or what can you do with them? So
Yeah.
we are trying to do that.
Yeah.
So.
I have a quick follow-up question. So you presented 50, 40, and 10% should be rejected, but only 2%, less than 2% were. I wonder if town of Niskayuna would like to do a self-study in some of those areas.
That's probably pretty accurate for Niskayuna based on my.
Same.
Yeah, we may modify slightly more than that because, like Clark had said, we do good modification, but it is very rare for us to disapprove a project.
Yeah, I've been on the CAC since 2003, and I would say we're in line with that, or it ebbs and flows. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's probably not too different.
Yeah.
But you are a mathematician, so the numbers would be very revealing, wouldn't they?
Right. So from his feedback from the conference, it seemed that we should be more strict in the things that the committees approve or put forward.
Well, I would think that you just have to acknowledge that you have this bias.
Yeah.
And really judge the projects on the merits of the project.
Yeah.
But I think what I've learned over the years is you should say what's on your mind,
Mm.
and that's important to express your viewpoints on any project.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of what we're
Yeah.
trying to get is
Yeah.
empower people to do that.
But the reason that checklists are important is, like I mentioned with Pierce Road, when you see something that is concerning to you on a project, you can fixate on that and then work really hard to fix that part. And you can miss something like the grading. But if you have a checklist, you can still identify those things, but then hopefully, because you're being structured, which is why we go through the questions on the seeker, I think we actually do that better than a lot of boards, is that you're not missing something that you've
Yeah.
looked at for every single project. Even if it may not be relevant to that one, you're going through the process. Yeah.
And I think too, the one end is the saying no part, but also putting some other restrictions or mitigations that you want to see, that you are empowered to do those types of things on projects. So it's almost just reminding yourself that.
Yeah.
all the
And the
time.
seeker tool is one of the most
Yeah.
powerful tools to do that.
Right.
And you do it early and you try and identify as much as you possibly can.
Sounds good.
Chuck, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I just want to thank you for the presentation. That was excellent. And as a certified records manager, next time don't breeze through the record keeping piece.
That's true.
I'm kidding.
It actually was.
Thank you for
It actually
sharing.
was good, but
I'm sure it was, but not necessarily relevant to this meeting. Appreciate it.
Okay, with that, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you, all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you.
So I'll email the two things from privilege to the floor.
Okay, yeah.
I thought you were
Um,
Why would you think?
We spend a lot of time